noticed.
I hope I am. Good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me? Someone give me a thumbs up. Yay, I have a new microphone. Hopefully it's better sound than in the past. Nice to see some familiar faces. Hi, Wally and Mary. I got your email. I'll talk about gout. Let me see who else. Valerie, I got your email. I'll talk about magnesium. For people I don't know, welcome. My name is Tamara Sachs. You probably knew that already. And this is our monthly open Q&A Zoom call. I got a couple of people's questions in advance. You don't have to do that, by the way, but it's always nice to have a couple to start off with. Let me give people a couple more minutes to join because things are popping. My little squares are expanding. I see a lot of people I know and a couple of people I don't. I hope that you all are sharing this monthly. Let me rephrase that. My request to you all is that you share this, whether it's the email or social media post, and get more people that do not know what functional medicine is, and see if they can enlarge their thinking and their awareness. Okay. So let's give it another couple of minutes. So those of you that, this light is very bright, isn't it?
Just sit down.
I'm like faded. Yep. Oh, well, whatever. Those of you that have been on before know this, but I have to make this disclaimer. This is an open forum. I'm not giving specific medical advice to anybody. Can't do that. I need a lot more information than what this would provide. This is a general discussion. So if you ask me a personal specific question about your condition, I'm going to generalize it. I'm not going to answer what you should do. I'm going to talk about the topic in general and do the best I can to help you understand what's going on and give you some general advice, but understand that I can't be your doctor on this call. So that's my legal disclaimer, if you will. And the second one is that we are recording these and they are posted on my website. They're not posted to YouTube or anything fancy. They're just on my website. You have to go look for them and find them. But if you don't want to be videotaped and then on my website, please turn your camera off and don't speak. Otherwise, I'm going to take that as a permission to post your image and whatever else on my website. Okay, so welcome to all of you. I see a few new faces popping up. So the first topic, we have 3 already, and then anyone else can pop in and ask a question if we have time. I'm going to first go to gout. I received the first of my 3 questions came in today from folks that I've known for a long time about, I think, their son. Anyway, gout's a really complicated thing. Everybody knows somebody with gout, so this can apply to everybody. Gout's a metabolic disease. Why some people get it, why some people don't. There's genetics, there's metabolism, and it deserves a workup. It deserves someone have a look, and make sure there's not a secondary reason for gout, number one. And then people who have gout are just really unfortunate. There's a lot of foods they can't eat to excess, even some healthy foods that can trigger gout. And so for folks who do the best they can, but still have frequent flare-ups, like more than once or twice a year, then allopurinol is a medication that they can take, that I would actually suggest that they take every day to keep uric acid level from building to prevent gout. You cannot take allopurinol when you're in a flare or having an attack of gout. It has to wait till you're better, and then it's a preventive measure. But from the email that I got, I won't go into the details. He's done every other drug there is. And yes, you have to use pretty strong medications. Gout hurts bad. It is a very painful, a sheet hurts on your foot, right? Air hurts. Gout is really very unpleasant. And what's interesting to me, at least, maybe not to you, but if you Google the diet best for gout, there's a lot of conflict there. There's a lot of conflict. And in the Japanese literature, soy is one thing and here it's another, and fish, there's some healthy foods though that are high in uric acid that can cause gout. For people who have a rare flare-up of gout, then it can be a detox issue. Gout, uric acid is a toxin like many, many things, and we have a way to get rid of it. I measure uric acid on almost all patients at least once to assess their detox, not to look for gout. Gout's pretty rare, and people who have gout know it, and it hurts, and they tell me, right? But I'm looking for uric acid levels that are moderately high as a sign that the detox pathways may not be, it's just one little sign, may not be adequate. So that's gout in a quick nutshell. It's a tough one. And the dietary restrictions, the obvious ones are red meat and alcohol, especially wine. And some of those foods are not a bad thing to avoid, rich sauces and red meats, but oysters and some other great foods are also on that list. I think it's all about moderation for most people, but you have to get educated so that you don't eat a meal that has 3 gouty foods in it without realizing it. You can have one at a time, maybe, but you can't do 3. You know what I mean? So that's all I got about gout, unfortunately, but it does deserve a good doctor workup, either a nephrologist or an endocrinologist, to look for any underlying causes of gout, which are rare, but deserve to be looked for. Okay. The second question I got, and I'm just going to generalize this. I'm not even sure if Lori is on, but just about age,
in the garden,
when to do medical treatments or not, surgical treatments or not, by chronology. So the question was about being a healthy 85-year-old and being told not to do a certain heart surgery because of her age. I don't know the particulars, but I would just say that your calendar age is not your biologic age. And there's a huge difference. And I know some really fit, healthy 85-year-olds that if they needed surgery to get to 95, should do it. If you needed surgery to get to 125, that's a different consideration, right? But certainly not to withhold important medical therapy for someone based on their calendar age would be, a very strong answer for me. People heal, people always heal. As long as they're alive, they heal. So if it's an important surgery for quality of life or for longevity, it's definitely to be considered no matter what your age. All right. Osteoporosis is a topic we come back to over and over and over. And I'm sorry for the men on the phone, but all the men on the phone have women that they love. And men get osteoporosis too, just much more rarely, but they do. And men with risk factors should definitely get bone density because it's really overlooked in men, unfortunately. And so I'm not going to go through the whole osteoporosis thing again, unless many of you wave your hands simultaneously. But I think many of you on the call have heard me talk about osteoporosis in the past. Whoops, someone doesn't know I'm on the phone. Someone I have to call back because I'm on the phone. And so, sorry about that. And so, just turn my phone off. As I was saying, osteoporosis. So I've written a chapter on osteoporosis in a medical textbook. It's a long time ago. I reread it every couple of years. It's still kind of cutting edge, which is sad. That's just sad. It's something I wrote over 15 years ago is still, not only pertinent, but still unknown to a lot of doctors. So you can look at that. It's on the website under media. The long and short of it is that, and someone asked me the other day if my calcium on my blood, on our blood test, if my calcium is normal, how come I have osteoporosis? And I just wanted to cry and pull my hair out. Osteoporosis is not a simple disease. Bone is a complex organ that has a lot of things going on. It's a living, breathing, changing, always, remodeling organ. And it's a lot more than calcium. So in a nutshell, bone is, think of it as a protein center, a protein matrix, if you like. So protein is really important. You can be osteoporosis because of protein loss, right? And then there's minerals, a bunch of them, not just calcium, strontium, magnesium, all sorts of minerals, calcium and magnesium being the 2 most abundant, but those trace minerals are really important for those minerals to form a crystalline, hard structure that we know as bone. But bone is living tissue, right? It just doesn't look the same as your skin, but it is living tissue, right? So bone requires lots of minerals, not just calcium. It requires protein. It requires gravity. It requires forces on it to keep it strong because the body's lazy fundamentally. And if it doesn't have to do something, it won't. So if there's no forces acting on bone to keep it strong, it's going to go, I can be mush now. That's easier. Right? So astronauts in space lose tons of bone, even though they're exercising hours a day. They have to exercise hours a day, in gravity to maintain some semblance of bone mass, because without gravity, their bones just disintegrate, and so do ours. So bone is complicated. The question is about magnesium, and that her bone formula doesn't really have any magnesium in it. And I think that's a mistake. I don't think it's really a bone formula if it doesn't have magnesium. The ratios are variable. I'm not going to get into the details because there's a lot of controversy there. 2 to 1, 1 to 1. None of that matters if you're absorbing, if we don't know how you're absorbing, right? So what you take in your mouth is not the ultimate decision, right? It's what you absorb from your GI system into your bloodstream and then can actually use. So there's a lot of differences in absorption of magnesium. There's many different kinds of magnesium and so on. So I still, in terms of osteoporosis stuff, I still recommend following Susan Brown for one, Better Bones, and AlgaCal. AlgaCal stuff, I know it's salesy because it's AlgaCal company putting out stuff about their own product, but they've not been wrong. You know, I've never seen anything that makes me wince, right? It's all fairly well researched. It's well documented. There's some new information I'll just share, and then we'll move on about strontium. In the past, I have said that strontium makes bones look stronger on bone density because it's dense, but we don't know if it really helps fracture. And now we do. There's a couple of good studies that I've been convinced now that strontium does in fact reduce the incidence of fracture, not just make bones look better, but actually function better. So I'm back to being a strontium fan. I had some reservations only because there wasn't good data. But I think the other thing that I learned recently that I'll share, and then we will move on, is that the majority of fractures in women happen in women who have normal to mildly negative bone density. So that's just a function of numbers of people in the world who break things, but it's still really interesting. And this reminds me that, you know, your balance is as important as your bone density. Your overall muscle and tone is as important as your bone density. Bone density is just one feature of things, right? And so if you're able to stand on one foot and move your arms up and down, then you're on the right track. Try it. If you can't stand on one foot and close your eyes and stay there, or stand on one foot and do some functional movements on one foot, then you, my friend, like me, need to work on balance every single day, because there's no one really young on the call that I can see. I mean, like 18, 20, 25. After that, we lose balance if we don't work at it. So every time you put your shoes and socks on, stand on one foot. Whenever you're in line somewhere, stand on one foot. Make sure you got something to hold on to, but work on balance every single day, all of us, because that's the biggest risk to breaking something is falling down, go boom. All right, any important follow-up on osteoporosis questions?
What kind of magnesium
send them
would
to
you
me for next
recommend?
month. Okay, who's got a question? I think I got the written ones. Who wants to raise their hand? Fran, I saw you first, go for it.
Relative to bone,
I can't hear you.
can you hear me now?
Try again.
Are you
I had
able
this
to
problem yesterday, but I fixed my speakers. I could hear someone else. How strange.
Can
I'm
anyone else?
sorry, Fran. I'm going to have to
Okay.
get on my phone and hear you on my phone like I did. I thought I fixed this problem. I apologize. Let me keep talking about some other question while I do this, because I can chew gum and walk at the same time, just not quickly. Hang on just a second. This will be quicker if I just do this. I'm having technical difficulties. Give me 1 second, folks. Join. Oop. There we go. I'm going to have to lower this one. Sorry, hang on. Okay, that should stop that horrible noise. All right, I am somehow no longer on video, but okay. Hi, guys. Go ahead, Fran. I'm sorry.
Okay, relative to bone health, I think I've understood you to say when your vitamin D levels are less than 42, you don't make bone. Was that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
I probably did say that. I'm not sure the data is holding up to make that exact number. And I think I always qualified it that we think it's around 42. But yeah, we think around 40, 42, you know, and you know, that's a really good question, because a lot of doctors don't know this, sorry to say, because the lab range says, you know, 20 something or 30 something to whatever, it depends on the lab. Understand, this is just a generalized thing that's really, I think, important to understand. Lab ranges with a few exceptions, like antibody levels and things like that. When there's a range, then generally that range is found by taking 1,000 to 2,000 relatively healthy, self-professed, no diagnosis, healthy people, and plotting their blood numbers on a graph and calling the middle normal. That's what normal ranges are, right? Presumably healthy people. These are typical Americans, by the way, so I don't think any of them are healthy by definition, just because they have no diagnoses and no, right? So that's a problem. But it just, it just tells you on the bell curve, it's called. When you plot everybody on a curve, it's usually a bell curve. There's people on one end, there's people on the other end, and most people are in the middle. That doesn't mean that that's normal or optimal at all. So this is an example of vitamin D levels, doctors just going by the lab ranges and calling 30 okay, because the cutoff is 30 and they're 32 or something like that. That's just not optimal. So normal and optimal are not the same thing. So for making bone, 50 to 80 still seems to be, according to literature, the best range to stay in. And there is no risk at 50 to 80, unlike what some doctors think. The only time that that's not good, just to be complete here, is in two kind of conditions. Sorry for that background buzzy. If you're not muted, if you can mute, that would be great. Here we go. I'm going to ask you to mute. Susan, if you could mute, that would be great. Maybe that's my background noise. I have an echo on my phone. It's me. Huh. The only time that you don't want to have a vitamin D level that's above 50 is if you have sarcoidosis and or Crohn's disease. So granulomatous diseases don't do well with vitamin D without some management. That's it. Otherwise, aim for 50. If you're a little closer to 70, that's fine, but aim for 50 and that's that. The last thing I'll say about that is we no longer make adequate vitamin D from the sun. So those of you that used to stop vitamin D intake pills in the summer, thinking you're getting some sun and then start again in the winter, those days are over. There's too much problems with the ozone layer and with certain other pollution in the sky that's filtering out a certain kind of rays that we need to make vitamin D. And most of us are too toxic, polluted, have too many issues, that very complicated step of taking skin sun through the kidney and the liver to make vitamin D has been compromised. And we just don't do it as well as we did 50 years ago. So supplementing with vitamin D is pretty much a requirement for everybody. I've only met one person in 20 years of 22 years of measuring everybody who had an adequate vitamin D level without supplementing. So there you go. Supplement with vitamin D, typically 5,000, 2,000 might do it. But most importantly, it's not what you take, it's what you do. So everybody should have a blood level of vitamin D done at least annually. And some doctors say to you that Medicare won't pay for it. That is not true. Medicare will pay for it. And even if they don't, right? Do you not get your brakes on your car fixed because your insurance doesn't pay for it? Or do you do what's important for your health, regardless of your insurance? So, I would fight back when your doctor says that they want to treat you based on your insurance. I would say, let me decide that. How much does it cost? Not very much. So get a vitamin D level. The code is E55.9. Everybody gets a vitamin D level at least once a year with any insurance with that code, E55.9. So let's educate the other docs out there. Who else has a question? Since I can now hear you.
Thank you.
I didn't see who that was. Oh, you're welcome, Fran. Go ahead, Jeff. I see you.
Okay. You mentioned a couple of times ago that there's probiotics that have lots of CFUs and doesn't need refrigerated. But what is it? Do you
That's a great question. Almost all probiotics now do not need to be refrigerated. We refrigerate them, and the health food stores do because we get them in bulk, and they might sit there for a month, and we don't want to give you fresh stuff. But what every company now, every good company that I've ever worked with, if the bottle says 100 billion or 100,000, CFUs, for example, they put 150, 130, whatever it takes, so that by the expiration date, there is still whatever's on the label.
Oh.
So as long as you don't put it next to the stove or in direct sunlight, as long as it's kept in a sealed container in a dry, quiet, cool place, cool place, you're good. If you go away for 3 weeks, then put them in the fridge, right? But if you're taking them every day, my strong advice is leave them out, or you're going to forget them because they're going to be in the back of the fridge. And you don't have to. You really don't have to. I keep mine out. Most probiotics are also thermostable now. The good ones are all really stable for quite a while outside of the fridge. So that's just a technological advancement in the last, 5, 10, 15 years. That didn't used to be the case, but it is now. Yeah, it is now. So all of them is the answer, not just one brand.
Oh, so there's multiple. So just those are the criteria, and just look for a brand that fits that criteria.
They all fit that criterion now.
Okay. And
They
it's
all-
ideal to
I mean-
just take it on an empty stomach first thing in the morning?
No, I think probiotics like food. I mean, the normal way we get probiotics is from raw veggies in the ground. We didn't used to scrub them that much, and a little bit of dirt had a little bit of bugs, and we like kids play in the mud and get better immune system, same idea. So probiotics like to be with food.
Oh,
Stomach acid, some of them are acid stable, some of them aren't. So if you put it in your stomach with acid and digestive juices, they may not survive. So eat them as in food. And the other way to get good probiotics is with food, fermented food. So kimchi, sauerkraut, pickled beets, pickled carrots, anything pickled you want, you can make your own very easily, by the way. You don't have to spend a fortune at the health food store. Some of the prices of these things, they have this whole pickles aisle now, right? Have you all seen this in health food stores? It's the new thing. They're like $6.99, $7.99, $8.99 for a little jar of pickled vegetable. Like, take some vegetables, get a jar, put some vinegar, put some salt, shake it up, let it sit. You got the same thing for nothing. So anything pickled, anything fermented. So it's interesting. Every culture on this planet has a fermented food that is part of the culture of that diet. So pick one that you like and eat it every day. Yogurt's not that great of one. Most yogurts are pasteurized. Very few have active cultures. And I'm not a fan of dairy, as most of you know, but it's just a myth that you need yogurt to get your probiotics. Now, you need vegetables, raw vegetables, and because if you don't have the fiber for those probiotics to eat, right, they're going to die anyway. So you can keep taking them all you want, but they're not going to colonize and stay in your gut. So it's all about the microbiome and having a good pH and a healthy environment for those probiotics to stay. People who are really healthy and eat really well don't need to take probiotics. I don't have them as part of my must do supplement list at all. So when your gut's good and you're eating mostly half your plate of vegetables, raw and cooked, getting all that good fiber every day, then your microbiome, unless you have an underlying issue, which some of you do, I know, but unless you have an underlying issue, you don't need probiotics except, post antibiotics or stressor or food poisoning or something like that.
okay. Okay. You mentioned fiber. So you don't think juicing is a good idea then if you need fiber?
Yeah, I think juicing is great for other reasons, right?
Oh, okay.
Value in juicing, but then when I used to juice, which I just haven't in a long time, honestly, because the research on Juice Plus exceeds any value of juicing. But I like to juice cucumbers and celery is a wonderful thing I'll do periodically just as a cleanse. Makes a nice big glass. 3 stalks of celery and 1 cucumber is perfect. Add some ginger, add some garlic. It's a great thing, right? But then take this fiber out of the machine, save it, freeze it if you're not ready to use it, but then eventually make muffins, put it in soup, add it back into things, right? A couple tablespoons in every cooked vegetable. You'll never notice it, but there'll be that extra fiber there. Don't waste it. I'm sure you're juicing good organic things. So save the fiber. The worst, put it in your garden, but ideally put it in your stomach. Right, like we said last month, the definition of a prebiotic is vegetable fiber, right? So don't go buying prebiotics. The definition is vegetable fibers, but they're critical. Your microbiome cannot survive without vegetable fibers. Cannot be healthy, cannot even survive. Okay. I think we'll take one last one, or maybe we'll have time for 2. Go ahead, Kathy.
I've been getting ads on Instagram for some reason about coffee substitutes. And one of the things is called raisin, I believe, and it's reishi mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
What is your
mushrooms are getting a social media buzz right now.
I was curious about your thoughts on that.
I haven't seen that particular product, but I've seen a couple. I've seen, I think 3. The only thing I would caution you on is mushrooms are only therapeutic when they're hot water extracts. So just chopping up mushrooms and powdering them and putting them into something, you get some fiber, but you're not going to get the medicinal benefit of mushrooms. So to get the medicinal benefit of mushrooms, they have to be a hot water extract, it's called. So just look into the company and see if in fact that's what they're doing, or if they're just powdered mushrooms or whatever. I've seen both. JHS is the company I use that I carry in the office. I think it's on the website if you want to look closely at it, but JHS is a very well-known, respected company that's been doing hot water extract of traditional mushrooms for, I don't know, decades. And so I learned a lot of what I know about that from them, just to full disclosure, right? That's where I learned at conferences. It was them presenting. So there is, that fact, but still it's all, they're very reputable. They're very cool. So you can
I'll
look
look
at
them up.
the JHS, yeah, and then look at whatever you're looking at. But, even mud has mushrooms in it. Athletic Greens has mushrooms in it. I take lion's mane every single morning on an empty stomach. It's one of the first things I do in the morning is I take, while the water is boiling, I take 3 lion manes in the morning because they're good for brain and memory. And without my brain and my memory, I am nothing. So I try to remember to take 3 more in the afternoon, but I never, I don't always do because it's away from food, which is just, tough for me and many of us. So mushrooms are great. The only thing I would caution you is in the traditional, the teeny little bit, like minuscule amount I know about Chinese medicine, I'm really not. That's not my thing. But I have understood that they should be rotated, that you shouldn't take the same potent, if you're taking them as a beverage, that's one thing. But if you're taking medicinal strength mushrooms, you shouldn't take the same one forever. You should rotate them. You shouldn't
Yeah.
take reishi for months on end, forever. It's 2 months, and then you cycle to a different one, to lion's mane or to something else. That's when you're doing it at not even high doses, just at medicinal doses. Okay. That's all. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
I will defer to folks that know Chinese medicine better than I do for more specifics than that. Matthew, I see you, and then I see Sally Joe. So we'll take both of you, then we'll finish up. Go ahead, Matthew.
Thank you.
I saw you first.
Thanks so much. As I arrived late tonight, I don't know if you stressed the thing that I always like to be a smarty pants about when talking about vitamin D, and that is the importance of vitamin Ks,
I did
K2.
not. Thank you. K1 and K2.
If you don't have the vitamin K, then from what I understand, taking large amounts of vitamin D is where people get in trouble.
I don't know
So,
about trouble. I mean, we've been doing it for years. I mean, there's always a little bit of drama around, don't take this with that and that with this. At the end of the day, people have survived doing a lot of stupid things, right? So we didn't know about vitamin K with D until, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. People were doing it. People were making, right, vitamin D from the sun and not calling, because they didn't eat the K at the same time. So it's relatively, it's very important. You're absolutely right. But let's not over dramatize that if you don't do it, you're in trouble. That's all I'm saying. So
Right.
yes, K1, K2 at a certain ratio is important to get that D into where you want it, to help calcium get into where you want it in the bone, not in the vessels. There's a lot of important things. And K is in produce, vitamin K is in green things. So if you're eating a lot of green
Right.
things every day, it's not, that's kind of what we used to do. We didn't take pills, we ate the sun and we ate green things and it worked great.
I've been having a little bit, that's an important thing. And I just want to mention the histamine effects of vinegars and all these various things which are fermented is something which is still on my mind quite a bit, because through genetic testing, I found that I don't make the DAO, which counteracts histamine. And I think that when we tell people to take things like a probiotic, not probiotics, although there are some that cause histamine, that can be problematic for some people. Am I correct?
Absolutely. If you have a bad gut, if you have SIBO, if you have a lot of bloating and abdominal discomfort from lots of things, but I think you know who you are. And, most folks, don't start sauerkraut when they're already blow, but you're right. But this is a general discussion, so folks who have histamine reactions from leftovers, from, all sorts of fermented foods, hopefully you've noticed by now that you really don't feel well and you should get some help.
Right. Well, oddly enough, I just discovered that one of the things that one thinks of as being so very beneficial to the gut, which is bone broth, is very high in histamine.
Yeah, but let me just stop you right there, and I'm going to take Sally Joe's question and we're going to wrap it up. But just again, to generalize this, right? Having a genetic quirkiness of whatever kind, whether it's MTHFR, COMT, SOD, you name it, does not mean anything. It might, but it's not enough. Now, if you have a null gene, no copy at all. If you have a 0-0, not if you have a heterozygous, a good one and a bad one. That means nothing, right? This epigenetics involved. No one gene does anything by itself, almost. There's a few, the bad diseases, the sickle cell disease, that's one gene. All sorts of things that you don't want to know about because, the things that kids die from as babies, those are usually one gene. But for us who have survived through that and had no medical huge issues, one gene, you can't hang your hat on one gene. You just can't. And
Yes,
so
I do
just
understand.
caution with that. Just caution with genetics and all the stuff that's coming out about, this and that. Grain of salt, 30,000 feet. If it makes you feel bad, don't do it. And there's exceptions. This is still a generalized talk. I've mentioned to some of you, I have a null gene for glutathione. No, I have no gene there. I need to take glutathione. That's not a mystery. But if I had a heterozygous, one and bad, one good, that would be a whole different matter. So moving on, Matthew, but thank you for the reminder that not everybody should take sauerkraut or fermented foods willy-nilly. And I think the rule of thumb is if you have a sensitive stomach, and many of you have heard me say this, you start with one strand. You start with, you touch the capsule and you see how it goes, right? If you have a sensitive stomach or if you're a sensitive soul and who reacts to a lot of things, just go real slow. That's all. Okay. Sally Joe, wrap us up. What's your question?
All right, thank you. So could you just shed a little bit of light on the difference between saliva and blood draw testing when it comes to our hormones? Like,
Yeah.
is there one that is more clinically accurate to show better information or
Yep.
I guess
I got you.
troubleshooting?
So every hormone's different. So I can't give you an answer for hormones, but
Right.
for example, salivary cortisol is considered by everybody in research and in the world to be the only stable way to look at cortisol because it's protein bound and it's stable. Testosterone can be really well measured in the blood. Progesterone can't be measured anyway. There's just no good way to measure progesterone, especially once you're taking it. Once you're taking it in a cream form or any pill form, all bets are off. Blood, saliva, urine, I'm lost no matter what, right? So every hormone's different. Saliva is generally more stable. Blood is an up and down thing. Blood is how most hormones travel. And so they're kind of designed to be messengers, quick in and out, deliver your message and then die, right? Because if you keep delivering the message, you stutter and you're delivering too much of the message. So hormones by their nature are fleeting. And so they're always bound by a protein, a carrier protein. Sex hormones are the sex binding globulin hormones. Think of them as like the school bus, picks up the hormones, drives them to where they have to go, then drops them off. So you can measure that, but that doesn't always tell you what you really need to know is how much active hormone is there and how many buses are there, right? So you need a lot more information. Hormones are complicated. So I don't have a simple answer except for cortisol. Blood cortisol is only useful to know if it's way too low, and it should never be low because someone taking your blood always makes your cortisol go up a teeny bit. I mean, unless you're a phlebotomist and you've been doing it for, unless you're me who takes my own blood, but most people, right, even just closing your eyes and imagining someone coming at you with a needle raises your cortisol level, literally.
Gotcha.
So that's just not accurate unless it's super high or super low. But salivary cortisol is very accurate. It's what it's used in research. It's the only thing used in research on stress. It's always salivary.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You bet. You bet.
Appreciate you.
All right, guys, we're going to call it a night, but I so am grateful for all of you being here. I hope it was valuable in some way, shape, or form to all of you, even if your questions weren't addressed. So thank you again. Sorry for technical weirdness, and we'll hopefully see you all next month, right? Bye. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.